Okay, this is the new chapter, Communicating Climate Change Science by Richard Somerville, who is a well-known climate scientist at UCSD Scripps Institution of Oceanography. He has been spending a lot of time writing, thinking, doing climate change science communication, but that also typifies one of the issues that maybe um, have to be understood in the sense climate change scientists are thrust into the middle because climate change affects now everything, economics, infrastructure, health, food, water, energy, and so on. So does that mean we are good at communicating climate change science with the lay people? Okay, so the book starts by making a few broad points of what is necessary for climate change science communication. Doesn't say whether it's if you are a climate change scientist or not. It's for everybody. But if you are trying to communicate climate change science, then you should be able to list at least four terms that have different meanings for scientists and the public and provide a better choice for each of them. So we will see that some words that climate change scientists use conveniently because it's the jargon from their business actually may have very different meaning for normal people, lay people. So how do we take care of those? For example, human made versus anthropogenic. Okay, anthropogenic does mean human made, but in our business we never say human made, we always say anthropogenic. And anthropogenic may be becoming part of the general vocabulary as well, but till it does, we have to be careful. Be able to explain at least four important scientific findings that illustrate our understanding of recently observed and predicted climate change. I would say projected climate change because climate change projections include certain assumptions about the future, the population growth, technology, energy choices, policy choices, etc. Predictions are generally for weather and climate at a time of a season or two or three or whatever, right? So important to make the distinction, I think. So for example, many people say extreme events are increasing, but not necessarily be able to explain that so well, at least in terms of regional specificity. Why are extreme events increasing in some parts of India and not in others, whether it's related to local warming, for example. So some details you have to be very comfortable with. Be able to describe for non-scientists at least four kinds of observational evidence that show that the global climate has recently experienced warming. So warming, increase in water vapor, glaciers melting, sea level rising, heat waves, etc. Okay, so you have to have these things on at the tip of your fingers. Be able to use stories, metaphors, and vivid language effectively to help explain the importance of addressing climate change. So it's not just a dry scientific seminar, it is actually trying to reach people, lay persons, who are interested in knowing more. They may have questions that they need answered, or they just may not be aware of what this global warming is all about and what it means for them. Be able to have constructive and civil conversations about climate change with people who do not accept the fundamental findings of climate change science. So when people like Carl Sagan used to do, or Brian Greene explains astrophysics, the theory of relativity and string theory and so on. Neil Tyson deGrasse does such a good job of explaining astrophysics, etc. And there are not many controversies. People go in with an open mind, what is called a beginner's mind in Buddhism, for example. Whereas as soon as you come to climate change, people think they already know what is happening. So they just want to kind of see if they can confirm their knowledge already, existing knowledge, or they are really open-minded to learn something new. You have to be able to reach them by knowing what controversies are already lodged in their head. So the first step is, of course, then preparation. Preparing well is the first step to communicating well. Okay? We know that certain politicians come without good preparation and they just try to pivot to something they know no matter what is asked. We cannot do that. Preparation includes knowing general principles of communication and having access to valuable resources. General principles of communication, we will see some of those. Also includes acquiring an adequate knowledge of the science of climate change. What is your true belief and your philosophy about climate change? This is something I added. I also added this about your tendencies for confirmation bias and whether you live up to your own words. Because I am now constantly being asked by many young climate science PhDs or masters or whatever that they want to communicate climate science. And they have obviously read up the IPCC numbers of CO2 is 420 ppm and sea level is rising and extremes are increasing and so on. But they don't know exactly where to take that in terms of what do you tell people? That the world is coming to an end? Or that if they switch to hybrid car everything will be okay? So we have to have a very clear idea about what our own philosophy is. Do you think individual action will save the world, or the system needs change and solutions that are scalable have to emerge? You have to know exactly what you're trying to say, but also the place from where you yourself are coming. Because if you give a nice talk and then you drive off to your nice energy intensive lifestyle, then the people may lose focus on the message, or vested interests can highlight your lifestyle and say this person is living a very carbon intensive lifestyle but talks about climate change. So this dichotomy has to be resolved in your head properly. You have to explain why you're able to worry about climate change and tell people about its dangers, and yet you can live a normal life. What do you believe in terms of the solutions? What are your tendencies for confirmation bias? Do you dismiss people who ask legitimate questions? Do you think they are stupid, or are you able to deal in a civil and good sense with them? Do you live up to your own words in terms of lifestyle changes, eating less meat and so on and so forth? Okay, so we'll discuss further details, but there are obviously lots of principles involved. Even though it's about climate change science, you have to be aware that this is now a very controversial topic, and we'll see a little bit about why it has been made into such a controversial topic. But you cannot make something controversial unless people are listening to another message and saying that makes sense, right? Like, for example, if tobacco companies tell you smoking is okay, your antenna will go up and say that's not true. Whereas if an energy company says carbon dioxide is not the cause and climate always changes, and some developing countries used to think that climate change is being talked about by the rich countries because they want to make sure developing countries don't grow. So all kinds of stories can be built, but why do people believe them? Because some of it they think makes sense, because it appeals to their confirmation bias in some sense. Okay? Confirmation bias is essentially when you are willing to throw away facts when they contradict your already held belief. Think about it. You can dismiss facts if it contradicts your beliefs. Some beliefs can be so strong that facts will not change your beliefs. So confirmation bias is important for everybody, but for a climate change communication person, it has to be something that has to be watched out very carefully.